The Vanport Flood of 1948, Oregon's Forgotten Disaster. Vanport, Oregon, was a city born out of wartime necessity, but lost to nature's fury on May 30th, 1948. In just a few hours, this thriving, diverse community disappeared beneath the Columbia River's floodwaters. The Vanport Flood remains one of America's most devastating, yet overlooked, tragedies. Its story, one of human resilience, environmental negligence, and unfulfilled promises. Vanport was constructed in 1942 as a solution to Oregon's housing crisis during World War II. Located on marshy land between the Columbia River and the railroad lines north of Portland, the city was designed as a temporary home for workers in the Kaiser shipyards. In just 110 days, 10,000 hastily built apartment units rose from the wetlands, housing over 40,000 people. Its population included a significant number of African Americans, many of whom had fled the segregated South, drawn by the promise of work and better living conditions. At its peak, Vanport was the largest public housing project in the United States and the second largest city in Oregon. But Vanport's foundations were as precarious as the promises made to its residents. The city was built on a floodplain, protected by an aging system of earthen dikes never designed to withstand prolonged stress. The apartments were constructed cheaply, with wooden frames and no basements, reflecting their intended short-term use. By 1948, however, many residents had stayed beyond the war, turning Vanport into a vibrant working-class community. Spring of 1948 brought ominous signs. Heavy rainfall combined with snowmelt from the Cascade Mountains pushed the Columbia River to its limits. The river surged against the dikes, threatening to overflow. On the morning of May 30th, 1948, officials distributed leaflets reassuring residents. "The dikes are safe at present. You will be warned if necessary." This assurance proved fatal. At 4:17 p.m., a railway embankment acting as a levee gave way, unleashing a torrent of water into Vanport. The flood struck with terrifying speed. Within minutes, the city was submerged under 10 feet of water. Buildings were lifted off their foundations and carried away by the current. Eyewitnesses recalled the chaos vividly. Families fled with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Parents screamed for their children. Neighbors broke windows to free those trapped inside. Makeshift boats and rafts became lifelines. Some climbed onto rooftops, clinging to trees or telephone poles to escape the rising water. A 12-year-old boy later recounted seeing his house float away, his family barely escaping in time. Despite the overwhelming destruction, official reports listed only 15 deaths, a number survivors disputed for decades. Many believed the true toll was much higher, especially among marginalized populations whose losses were underreported. The survivors were left homeless, many without resources or a place to go. The flood laid bare deep societal fractures. African American residents, who had found refuge in Vanport's relative inclusivity, faced new challenges. Portland's housing market was riddled with racial discrimination, forcing many into overcrowded and neglected neighborhoods. The flood became a catalyst for civil rights advocacy, as displaced residents demanded fair housing and equal treatment. Vanport's destruction also highlighted the dangers of building on floodplains without proper precautions. Engineers later criticized the city's reliance on inadequate dikes and the lack of emergency planning. The disaster underscored the need for stricter urban planning and flood management, lessons that continue to resonate today. Today, Vanport's story lives on in fragments. The area where the city once stood is now Delta Park, its history marked by a small plaque and the memories of those who lived through the disaster. The Vanport flood remains a powerful reminder of the human cost of neglecting environmental risks and the resilience of communities in the face of adversity.